Hey everybody, it's Abishur Prakash here, or Mr. Geopolitics. What a profound moment to watch Trump and Zelensky clash in the Oval Office like this. It was very reminiscent of when Trump clashed with Pelosi and Schumer in the Oval Office during his first term. But of course, the stakes are far greater now. This is a big sign that the Ukraine-Russia war is truly in uncharted waters and that a ceasefire or some kind of resolution is becoming more and more difficult and nearly impossible. There are a few key takeaways from Trump and Zelensky's clash. Let's jump right in. The first key takeaway is that Trump has made his strategy very clear. There's no more guessing, there's no more piercing through the noise, there's no more grayness. Trump has revealed his strategy for Ukraine, and he did so in an off-the-cuff remark. During the conversation, during the argument, Trump said that either you, being Ukraine, signs a ceasefire or we, being America, are out. That is now the path forward, the trajectory that America is on regarding the Ukraine war, that America will try and get Ukraine to sign a ceasefire that's brokered between the US and Russia, even though Ukraine is not even involved in those negotiations yet, or America will cut all aid to Ukraine, even if it means Ukraine could end up losing the war very soon. According to some estimates, Ukraine could lose the Ukraine war, the Ukraine-Russia war, within 6 months if America fully walks away. So there's no more confusion as to what Trump is planning for Ukraine, as to where the US-Russia talks are leading to. This is now the most clarity the world has about how Trump plans to resolve the Ukraine-Russia war. That's the first takeaway. The second takeaway, and it's connected to the first, is that the Ukraine war is now Europe's problem. This is something I've repeated several times before, that as America rethinks its position, its support, its contribution to Ukraine, that the onus will be on Europe to pick up the slack. And the remarks that European nations have been making for months now, from France to Germany to Poland, that these countries can support Ukraine, can support the aid, even if America is not in the picture. Those remarks will now be put to the test. All European heads of state who have watched and are watching this interaction between Trump and Zelensky will be very shocked and open-eyed and clear that they also need to now make a decision about Ukraine, that America's commitment is almost over, and that the responsibility in the West for the Ukraine war will fall onto Europe very quickly. So one of the biggest effects of the Trump-Zelensky argument is that Europe may start to make some serious cutthroat decisions about Ukraine, whether it's 100% unwavering support or whether it's following America and trying to find a way to bring this war to an end, even if Ukraine is not happy about it. That's the second takeaway. The third takeaway is that there is going to be global hesitation to rely on America going forward. A lot of nations that have their own flashpoints flaring or have flashpoints that could erupt in the future, and who are either relying on America in real and meaningful ways or plan to turn to America if those flashpoints boil over, those nations may now think twice. Those governments may view what just happened as the biggest sign that relying on America is not a safe bet. And there are two reasons why. The first is because America's commitments are now dependent on who is in the White House. It's no longer long-term commitments that cross over between administrations. It's now 4-year commitments. And short-term commitments are anathema to long-term geopolitical thinking. Nations are building 5, 10, 15, 20-year geopolitical strategies, and having a 4-year commitment doesn't work for them. That's the first reason why. And the second reason why is because a lot of heads of state will not want to be put in the same position as Zelensky, where they're called into the Oval Office and they're given a dressing down by the president and vice president for the world to see. No world leader will want to be in such a position. So a lot of nations may increasingly adopt the position that America is not a reliable nation when it comes to defense, when it comes to security, and those nations may now double down on their own ideas of what I call sovereign defense. So that's the third takeaway. The fourth takeaway is that this could now ricochet between the US and Russia. If there is real breakdown between Trump and Zelensky, then the Russians may think twice about the ceasefire talks. The Russians have approached these talks because they believe that America can bring Ukraine to the negotiating table. But if America can't do this, even if America threatens to cut aid, then the Russians may rethink these talks altogether. Is there a point in having them? And if anything, Russians may approach these talks simply to see what Americans are willing to give, simply to assess the American position. But any hopes in Moscow that America can find a way to bring Ukraine and Russia to the same table may be dashed watching this interaction between Trump and Zelensky. So this is a major effect of this fight in the Oval Office, where it could ricochet and begin to affect the ceasefire talks, which just took place in Riyadh. Many more are scheduled. And if the US-Russia ceasefire talks break down, then this will push US-Russia relations in a downward trajectory. Because at this point, the only thing raising US-Russia relations are hopes for a ceasefire, including for Russia, hopes that some of the sanctions get withdrawn. But if that disappears, then US-Russia relations will nosedive. So that's the fourth takeaway. The fifth takeaway is that there is what I call a death of diplomacy, that diplomacy is dying. Diplomacy is struggling to get a foot through the door at every single flashpoint. In every single flashpoint across the world right now, diplomacy is struggling to break through. Diplomatic resolutions are struggling to take hold. It's not just Ukraine, Russia. There's real challenges in the Middle East, especially after the terrorist attack in Israel where 3 buses exploded. Now there's real fears that the fighting between Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah, could flare up, that the fragile ceasefire could fully break and never come back. So diplomacy is on its way out, and the reason is because countries have reached an inflection point when it comes to their geopolitics. No nation is willing to bend over backwards for the other side. Nations are doubling down on their position, and they would rather throw a punch than try and meet another nation halfway, because meeting another nation halfway is being viewed as defeat. That's the new logic of government. So diplomacy is increasingly becoming a fool's errand in this new era where war is becoming the status quo. And the last takeaway has to do with the rare earths deal. That was the big deal that brought Zelensky to the White House, a $500 billion deal where Ukraine would hand over parts of its reserves, rare earths reserves, to US companies. And this was viewed as a win-win. For Ukraine, it was viewed as a way to keep America committed to Ukraine, to bring America's footprint in Ukraine in a new non-military way. And for the US, it was viewed as a powerful way to potentially build an alternative rare earth supply chain and end reliance on China over the next coming years. Now, all of that is on ice. That rare earths deal, which was in many ways the cause of today's meeting, nobody knows the state of it, the future of it. So key projects between the US and Ukraine that go beyond the military sphere are now starting to break down too. So those are 6 key takeaways around the Trump-Zelensky clash in the Oval Office. Surrounding all of them is that the ceasefire, hopes of a ceasefire, hopes of a resolution between Ukraine and Russia are now very thin. If there was hope that Trump could bring some kind of resolution, some kind of halt to the fighting, those hopes are now declining. And connected to that is that the Russians may view this fighting in the Oval Office as an opportunity to make more gains in Russia. The Russians may view this infighting in the West towards further support for Ukraine as the perfect opportunity to drive a new offensive, take more land, and in the process enhance their own negotiating position. So there are a lot of moving parts. This is truly an extraordinary and dangerous moment for the world, considering a lot of resources, a lot of attention, a lot of the spotlight has been on Ukraine now for over 3 years, and there is increasing fear, increasing fragility, and there's an increasing change of mood that this war now needs to end versus just a short time ago that we're willing to stand with Ukraine no matter what. So the next coming days and weeks will be very important regarding the future of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I hope you resonated with today's video insight. Leave your comments below and talk soon.